dint of my finger pressing down, and the fact that this has been slightly moistened. So I think for me that's a very foolish looking lid. I prefer the dome lid. So, but you get the idea of how to use it, Chuck.
And that'll, even though that seems a little bit tight now, it's going to contract, and so it'll fit fine, right?
Oh, I think so. I think it's wetter than the top of the pot. I have a sense of how thick it is. I'm going to throw a knob on it, so I need the bottom to be a little bit thick to sustain the effort. And I'm just throwing up to where I told myself the curve starts.
Just making a domed lid for a teapot.
I'm not going to take it up, but unless the bottom is very, very thick, you want a little beefiness there in order to throw a knob. But the reason I brought this picture is that there are many ways of solving the problem. Here's just a little round. Hello. Oh. I somehow thought you were Becca. I don't know why. Probably just a little ball of clay. Here's a little squished filial. Here's a thrown filial, right?
And the ball of clay you could just add on hand building.
Yeah, right. Okay. And it doesn't have to be anything. It can be a strap. It can be a little sculptural form. And often the lid of a teapot is so small you don't even need a knob. It's just what you like as a look.
Your style point.
Yep. Okay, so it's centered up. You got that on email.
Did I? Okay. I haven't seen it yet.
At least I sent it to my list.
Okay.
I think you're on my list.
I thought I was. I don't remember seeing it. That's okay.
I actually sent it twice.
I didn't see it twice. I got one at home. I got the blank one. Yeah, they sent me one.
Israel told me, be sure to vote on June 8th. I thought that was nice. When we were the CLL, the Center for Lifelong Learning. So it's sold date slip. So slip in here. And I don't want to compromise the strength of the dome. It's easy to push it in.
Can't ruin it.
Because it's hollow underneath.
Well, if it's thin, you can push it in. So I'm just putting slip on this part, not on both parts. So I have less of,
the other part. Okay.
less of a chance of making it way wet.
I get them when we get the offshore when, yeah, I can tell the minute the wind shifts because I
Okay, this is probably much more than I
It's pretty tall.
need. Especially in my own shop, I always make these little guys hollow and make them a little more complicated than I need to, just because it's kind of fun. But I'm not going to do that in a demonstration. So it's just little tiny points of pressure. I'm trying to coax it on around. And if we were to be thorough, the last form is an hourglass. The last of the basic forms is an hourglass form. And it's just that hollow form at the middle. You just coax it out to what resembles an hourglass, right? So you need to be sure that this is going to be high enough when the pot is finished and glazed that you can grip it. Not the straightest little knob in the world. Do a Yeah. And notice I'm trying not to wet the body of the lid. I'm trying to keep my moisture off it.
When did you throw that lid?
Same time I threw the pot.
When did you throw the pot? Was that last Friday?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I don't remember those cool dents you put in.
I put the dents in after.
Oh,
Sort of like cutting the spout out. Okay, so that's done. If there seems to be a huge disparity, boy, is that clunky looking. If there seems to be a huge disparity between the moisture of this and this, I would put a little wax resist around the base. I'm not going to do that until the end. And then I do this, it's just, you do sort of, I think when you cut these ritualistic things, because they worked before, maybe they'll work again kind of things.
Not that you're superstitious.
No, not at all. It's Friday the 13th.
oh.
Don't kill anybody.
So, you know when you open an evaporated can of milk, you punch 2 holes so that the milk can pour out of one side and air can go into the other side and help the pour. So there is a theory that a little hole in the lid will facilitate that, a smoother pour of tea entirely up to you. So I just put a little ball of clay there to punch through so that when I glaze it, there's a dam around the hole and it doesn't immediately fill up. And this is a commercial. Used to have a handle, right? And I was looking in my box because I have a smaller version of it. It used to look like this.
Oh, a hole maker.
Yeah, hole punch.
Oh, I should get one of those. I'd like to make succulent pots.
Yeah, there you go. Or your fettling knife will work.
Your what knife?
Long, slender.
That's right.
That's great because it gives you any kind of diameter you want. You just keep pressing.
And then turn once you're...
So, trimming a lot of things. So
This is called a Giffen grip.
So this lid has a little play. It's not a ton, but it's a little play. So if you want it to fit a little more tightly, you can size it. And so that's a nice skill to have, to understand how to size it. So I'll do that.
She's sizing the lid so it won't fit so
3
loose.
wiffle balls of clay. At generally speaking, fairly even intervals. For a teapot, the critical place is up here where it's going to fit.
Every time I set her up, she's pushed over.
Oh, a little decorative stamp.
And if the stamp were a little bit smaller, it would fill in that place, you know. It is what I have right now. But sometimes it's pretty to see that on the underside of a lid. They don't know that you've sized it necessarily. Oh, hello.
Oh, I'm in your seat. Okay.
So I'm just trimming what I made last week, Evan, and we're finishing up. So that takes away the,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
And let me turn it over again. Let me see. Just at the bottom of it. Yeah, so that's really pretty, the little.
Yeah, they're cute, huh? Sometimes one makes a recovery.
It's like a nice little surprise for whoever takes the lid off.
I've never seen you do that before, so.
Oh, good. Well, I earned my money for you. My salary. Okay. I just trim. And I use a foot template and I push it in at intervals that roughly corresponds to where I intend to deform the pot. In this case, this was an afterthought, so I don't have those programmed in, and I do have to probably trim the base of the pot a little bit. That's not bad. For a pot like this, you might want to have a little bit of beefiness there, but I do have to trim the outside. You can see my grief of not having a straight version of this. That's why I was so aggrieved. Because I use this all the time, and I even use the old school sliders.
Yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
It's a go-to tool.
I use it a lot. If you make a ton of cups or, you know, a ton of bowls.
I didn't do anything. I just pointed out that you had the wrong one on there. That's something. Yeah.
Well, no, I had been trying to fit this for a long time because I know my writing, and I had written, "Please do not adjust," which is like waving a red flag at anyone with a penknife. Sad story. And normally, I have one in my own shop. Normally, I'm not doing a lot of refined work in this part of the studio, except in porcelain. There's an argument about that. Porcelain.
That thing's quick and easy for doing that.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
The pot needs to be round.
I wouldn't have even had it centered by now.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably particularly hard to center one with the spirals,
Yeah.
because you go to tap the side of it, it catches your fingers.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a nice tool.
Definitely.
And see how I love this kind of line in there. That's the line of the cutting wire.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to preserve that. Okay, so now we're in business. Turn off the wheel.
That's a natural beauty scar.
Thank you. The only thing about a gift grip is it kicks stuff all over the place because it's higher than the splash pad. All right, you'll remember I struggled with getting the right size spout. One was huge and I had to start again. One was too small. This to Evan to here are possibilities of spouts. So let's see. So when you're holding things, I knew that I would do this. So as soon as the pot came free of the bat, I bagged it and I bagged it. I do know from years of experience that the spouts are they're hollow, they're thin, they're small. They're going to dry much more quickly than the body of the pot. So I watched them and I bagged them separately and quickly. And then when I dried the pot, Jeannie was the only one who really saw. It was a pile of stuff. I had the lids flipped upside down in this and balanced one atop another, and the spouts balanced on the lid, so everything dried sort of evenly.
You know we're well enough. This is from the side.
So the trick is, I think, not to get too aggressive a spout. And again, it's just your own aesthetic choice. My fiddle. So generally what happens in the beginning is people just put on their spout, and it's hugely disproportionate. It needs to be trimmed way down, is my experience.
Wait, so you made two because you didn't know which one?
I made two because this clay was so stiff last week. I must have complained about 4 million times about how lacking in malleability it was. And the first one I made was humongous. It looked like an elephant's foot. So then I made this one, which is pretty humongous, but better. And then this one that might be too small, but maybe by the time I trim it down, it might be decent. I also, really altered the pot in unintentionally when I moved it and handled it. Okay, so this is the important part. A pot will always pour. Whether it pours efficiently depends upon the potter. If you put your spout down here, you can only fill the pot as high as the lowest part of the spout. So you have to really think a little bit about where you're going to put the spout, unless it's just an artistic creation and you don't care. So I'm going to want the spout to be pretty high. I would like to fill it at least to there where my thumb is, maybe a little higher. So that requires a certain interesting amount of courage. I go into that spout when it's thrown and I pull it over because that's just my aesthetic. So you see I have a curve here. I need that to go on the pot evenly, not over to the side. So I usually mark where I feel that curve. Okay. And now I'm going to size it.
There's the tricky part.
Yeah. Well, I have two. And I would remind you that there's one that's just a hand-built spout on there too, which is very engaging. So.
Or you could just decide it's not going to be a teapot if you mess up your spout.
Yeah, I planned it. Yeah.
Yeah, your teapot's now a ginger jar.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and then if you glue it together in the glazing process, it's a jar for secrets. That's Jeannie's line. I love that.
Top secret.
I keep my secrets in there. So you see I'm cutting away. I should have kept it up here. I'm cutting away an appreciable amount of this. An appreciable amount of this. Maybe too small spout. We'll see. I love to make teapots because they're a kind of a puzzle. You're fitting together a lot of components.
A lot of parts.
And if you mess up at a certain point, tough nuggets. This stayed nice and wet, so that's a virtue. It's close to being a pug nose, but not quite a pug nose. So I'm going to go with this one. And I'm going to trim this bit. Okay. I'm going to put in a strainer. You can cut out a hole and use a tea caddy or tea bags. The idea of a strainer is if you're using, for example, mint that has a coarse leaf, you can drop it in there, steep the tea, and pour it, and the strainer will hold the tea leaves back. Normally I would be doing this over and over again. It stayed remarkably moist, but I can't stress the importance of trying to get everything of a comparable moisture. If this is too dry, it will shrink back awkwardly. Okay, and I use 7 punches. Because it's a magical number. And I learned from Vivica Haino to drive the hole in at an angle rather than straight through. She said it made less of a tendency to drip. Potters have all these theories, you know, 2 holes fill with glaze, 2 holes are covered by the spout, and 3 holes pour.
Yeah, but it's spread into 13.
Yeah.
Supposed to put extra in.
Oh, yeah?
13 of them.
Yeah, it is. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Okay. And it drives a nice clean hole.
I like that scoring tool.
Isn't that nice?
That's pretty fancy.
It was a score. Lots of times people, we've had this conversation more than once, Eric. They spend forever putting their studio together, and then there's all this extraneous stuff that their heirs don't want, or they can no longer use, and it goes to another potter.
That's your slit?
Uh-huh. That's just,
It looks so nice from far away. I don't know.
does it? Well,
I mean, I don't know. You know what you're doing, and I don't.
marginally. I mean, it's got to paint on.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say that's pretty good. What do you think? Too runny?
Couldn't tell with music playing.
I thought it was like the girl running. But
No,
I don't
I-
know. I don't know. I've
Yeah,
never.
I prefer running the chunky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess mine's a little bit thicker when I make
And you're hand building with more control
it. Okay.
than this. So basically, I dried this scrap, dried it, and then I put it in vinegar. There is vinegar rather than, yeah,
I can smell it.
yeah. Makes you want to have a salad, huh?
Although if you ask somebody, you probably ask.
That's true. I've never heard that.
It helps. It does definitely.
That looks good.
Yeah, that's not too bad. So then again, all the skills that you've been acquiring in the time that we've been together apply here. You want to see the slips oozing out around the connection. That isn't a forklift with material on it. Oh my God, I wonder if it came.
What does that mean?
Well, we've been waiting for this order forever.
Oh, the cutting order?
Whoa. Hot dog. It'd be nice to have some B-mix to start. It'll be in that lot, John, and on a big truck over there.
Oh, you mean get some bee mix before everyone starts next week?
No. We have to, we unload that whole area and we wash the floors and if it came, he'll drop it in the lot and he'll get it next week. There'll be plenty.
That'll be plenty, yeah. I've never not had it.
Yeah, no. Yeah, not too bad.
That looks really good.
So far, so good. Don't jinx me, Julie.
Okay, I won't jinx you. It looks okay.
It'll do.
It'll do.
So you see, I'm aggressively pushing it together, and that's what you've been learning to do with your hands. Feel the clay,
And you're supporting on the inside.
and I'm supporting on the inside. So I first of all tacked it into place, and now I'm melding it. If you notice the pictures, Julie, could you lift the pictures again? Notice how the spouts are just tacked on.
Yeah.
That's another mark of a skilled potter. It just depends upon your aesthetic. It seems like it's haphazard, but that person.
This one is so interesting. Like a lid.
Oh. Robin Hopper would call that spout a scrotal spout.
Yeah.
Without a shred of humor. Here we have a scrotal spout. No clay, okay. Well, it was briefly exciting. It's pretty early for the clay order to come. It comes from the city of industry, which is deep in the commercial part of Los Angeles. So I'm not going for a look at this point, I'm going for attachment.
He's back. Oh, he's got cement. Or like
Honey?
bags.
Yes,
He's clay.
yes, it is here. Something's come.
It's like cement bags.
Maybe the beginning of the bags of material. Ooh.
I know it's like he has a keg on the back of that book.
Yeah, I think that's propane or something.
I've been pouring mead at the wine festival, so kegs are on my mind.
Mead.
Mead, yeah.
So mead is like a
Honey
fortified.
wine.
Oh, is it nice?
Yeah, it's like its own taste. It doesn't taste like wine or beer or kombucha. It's like got its own taste.
Sherlock Holmes, I know he's a fictional figure, but
Yeah.
he made honey wine.
Yeah, it's one. I think it's like one of the first alcohols.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because it's naturally
I
fermented.
think
or-
they like the Nordic people made it first. Maybe.
I actually really miss
Oh, it was just one pallet. Oh gosh. Oh well. Better something than nothing. Okay, so you can see I took care to align the holes. Again, it's just a matter of personal preference. I like to shave the spout just a little bit. Spouts are trickier than they seem because they'll twist on the pot. So cutting a termination like this can be risky because if it remembers the way it's been twisted to collect itself, it will pour out of the corner of its mouth.
Yeah.
So I just get it roughed out, and then when everything's lined up and a little bit drier, I use a sure form planer just to make it even. This is premature right now. but it's a wonderful tool, just a wonderful tool. Okay, so all that remains are the lugs. So
So
the
you don't care about like making that smooth where the water would pour out?
not yet.
Okay, not yet.
There are refinements that will occur.
Okay.
Okay. So you notice that I also, generally speaking, make the lid have little knobs in it too. I just didn't think that I would do this, but I did this 3 times in class, so I didn't need to have all the same teapot over and over again. So I mixed it up after the fact. So I've given myself a little indication of where I want the lugs. You have to be able to get the lid off when the handle is in place. So can I just have this? Thank you. So sometimes it's good to...
She's adding these little lugs that will hold the leather handle.
So these have been drying since I pulled them just a little before I talked with you all today. So sometimes you have to put the lugs on the spout itself. Let's see. And ideally, the lugs have to be at the same level, which is to say, when you put the handles in, you want the ears, which are the part that wrap around the lug, to be even. So that's what I was looking at. It seems so improbable that this big old pot is going to be held up by these lugs, but it does work. Some things you have to trust me on. The lugs themselves are pulled, so they're pretty sturdy. But you don't have to use a pulled lug. You can use just a little slab with a hole in it. Okie dokie. So you have to allow for the shrinkage and stuff, but the lugs should fit. The teapot handle should be relatively even. You're looking to see that they're opposite one another. And now the issues of what Julie was talking about, cleaning it up a little bit. I learned to do this from Jeannie. Take a little, not Jeannie Thompson, not our Jeannie. Take a wet brush and just mop up the slip. So handy. All these years I've been just slopping it up a little bit, but Okay, we're coming to a conclusion here. I will hit this one more time when things are a little bit stiffer, just to make sure that I have it even and straight. And now, Jeannie, can you reach in that pitcher and give me, just dump those out or take them out, and give me that jar, please? Thank you. So now I'm just going to hedge my bets.
She's putting wax around the joining points so that they will dry at the same time.
I'm going to ask it to dry slowly at the important joints. Huh?
It retards its exposure to the air,
There you go. Thank you.
and so it dries more evenly.
It forces the joints not to, the thin parts not to immediately release its moisture, their moisture.
Otherwise, it might pull away from each other.
And at very least, you get a kind of cosmetic crack. It may not be a structural one. Do a very good job right there. Anyway, there you have it. And then I'm going to leave this uncovered for now, but then when I go home, I will leave it. I'm sorry.